I'm pregnant.
What?
I found out this morning.
And you came here to tell me?
I didn't come to ask for money. Then why did you come?
Because this baby deserves the truth. And what truth is that?
That you are the only man I trust.
The billionaire CEO stood frozen at the podium, cameras flashing like lightning, her hands trembling against the microphone. Behind her, the financial analyst she'd spent one forbidden night with waited in silence. His daughter's face still splashed across every tabloid in the city. The board wanted her head. The media wanted blood. Her mother wanted him gone. But Amelia Grant had spent 30 years building walls around her heart, and she was done hiding. She leaned forward, her voice cutting through the chaos like glass. Yes, I'm pregnant, and no, I won't apologize for it. The room exploded. If you're hooked, stay until the end. This story gets wild. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this reaches. Ethan Cole had learned to live inside the spaces between exhaustion and autopilot. That was what grief did. It didn't destroy you in one dramatic explosion. It just wore you down, morning after morning, until you forgot what it felt like to want anything beyond making it through the day. He stood at the kitchen counter at 6:45, the same time every weekday morning, slicing an apple into perfect quarters while the coffee maker hissed behind him. Lily sat at the table in her school uniform, swinging her legs and reading a library book about space, her dark hair still damp from the shower. She was 9 years old and too smart for her own good, the kind of kid who asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. Dad, did you know that time moves slower near black holes? Ethan glanced over his shoulder. That right? Yeah, so technically if you went near one, you'd age slower than everyone else. She turned the page without looking up. But you'd probably die first because of the gravity. Good to know, Ethan said, dropping the apple slices into her lunchbox alongside a cheese stick and a juice box. Try not to get too close to any black holes today. She grinned. No promises. He zipped the lunchbox shut and set it beside her backpack, then poured himself a cup of coffee that tasted like cardboard. He drank it anyway. The routine kept him moving. Lunch, backpack, shoes, jacket, keys, drop Lily at school by 7:30, drive to the office by 8:15, smile at coworkers who didn't really know him, stare at spreadsheets until his eyes burned. Pick Lily up at 3, homework, dinner, bedtime. Repeat. It wasn't much of a life, but it was stable. And after losing Claire 3 years ago in a car accident that still felt unreal on certain mornings, stable was all Ethan had left to offer his daughter. You ready? He asked. Lily closed her book and slid off the chair. Can we get tacos tonight? We had tacos Tuesday. I know, but I want them again. Ethan grabbed his keys from the counter. We'll see. That's adult code for no. That's adult code for maybe. He opened the door and ushered her outside into the cool October air. The neighborhood was quiet. Tree-lined streets still half asleep. A few other parents herding kids toward bus stops. Ethan unlocked the car and Lily climbed into the back seat, buckling herself in without being asked. She was independent like that. Too independent. Sometimes. It scared him how much she'd grown up in the last 3 years, how much she'd had to. He slid behind the wheel and started the engine. The radio kicked on mid-song, some pop track Lily tolerated but didn't love. She stared out the window as they drove, watching the world scroll past in silence. Ethan glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. You okay, kiddo? Yeah. She didn't look at him, just thinking. About what? She shrugged. Nothing. That was another thing grief had taught them both. Sometimes the quiet meant more than the words. Hyun Group's headquarters sat in the center of the financial district, a sleek glass tower that reflected the morning sun like a mirror. Ethan parked in the underground garage and took the elevator up to the 15th floor, nodding at a few familiar faces as he walked through the open office space. His desk was tucked near the back. Away from the windows, a cluttered landscape of monitors, notepads, and cold coffee mugs he kept forgetting to wash. He logged into his computer and opened the quarterly reports he'd been reviewing all week. Numbers didn't lie. They didn't ask questions or expect anything from you except accuracy. That was why Ethan liked them. Morning, Cole. Ethan looked up. Marcus Liu stood beside his desk, holding a tablet and looking mildly stressed, which was Marcus's default expression. He was the senior analyst on their team, a guy in his mid-40s who took his job too seriously and drank too much energy drinks. "Morning," Ethan said. "You see the email about the gala?" Ethan frowned. "What gala?" Marcus sighed. "The one Grant's hosting next week. Company fundraiser, black tie, open bar, all that garbage. HR sent the invite yesterday." Ethan vaguely remembered seeing something in his inbox but hadn't bothered reading it. Corporate events weren't his thing. "I'm probably not going, shame." "Yeah, well, attendance is strongly encouraged." Marcus made air quotes with his fingers. "Which means if you don't show up, someone's going to notice." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Who cares if they notice? Grant cares. She's been on this whole morale kick lately, wants everyone to feel like a family." Marcus rolled his eyes. "You know how it is. Show your face, shake some hands, pretend you give a damn." Eesh. Ethan didn't respond. He'd never spoken to Amelia Grant directly. She was the kind of person who existed in a completely different orbit. 30 years old, brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. The company loved her because she made them money. The media loved her because she looked good in magazine covers. Ethan didn't have an opinion either way. She was just the name at the top of the organizational chart. "Anyway," Marcus said, tapping his tablet, "I'm forwarding you the RSVP link. Try to confirm by Friday." "Sure." Marcus walked off, and Ethan turned back to his screen. He told himself he probably wouldn't go, but the truth was, he didn't have a good excuse not to. Mansiek. The following Tuesday, Ethan found himself standing in front of his closet, staring at the single suit he owned that didn't look like it had been through a washing machine too many times. It was black, simple, the kind of thing you wore to funerals and weddings and apparently corporate galas you didn't want to attend. Lily sat on his bed, watching him with the skeptical expression she'd perfected over the years. "You look weird, Gisati," she said. "Thanks." "I mean it. You look like a penguin. Wow." Ethan adjusted his tie in the mirror. "It's called formal wear. It's called uncomfortable." He couldn't argue with that. The collar felt tight, the jacket stiff, and the whole outfit made him feel like he was pretending to be someone he wasn't. But Marcus had been right. Attendance was mandatory, even if they called it optional. So here he was, dressed like a penguin, about to spend the evening making small talk with people he barely knew. "Mrs. Dawson's gonna be here in 10 minutes, Ethan said, grabbing his phone from the dresser. "Remember the rules? No sugar after 8, homework before TV, bedtime at 9:30. "Good girl." Lily flopped backward onto the bed. "Can I stay up until you get back?" "Probably not. These things run late." "How late?" Late. She groaned dramatically. "You're going to be so bored." "Probably." "Then why are you going?" Ethan paused, looking at her reflection in the mirror. "Because sometimes you do things you don't want to do." "That's a terrible reason." "Welcome to adulthood." The doorbell rang, and Lily bolted off the bed to answer it. Mrs. Dawson was their neighbor, a retired teacher in her 60s who'd been babysitting Lily since she was 7. She was kind, reliable, and didn't ask too many questions, which made her perfect. Ethan said goodbye, kissed Lily on the forehead, and headed out into the cool evening air. The gala was being held at some downtown hotel ballroom he'd never heard of, the kind of place with valet parking and chandeliers that cost more than his car. He felt out of place the moment he walked through the door. The ballroom was massive, filled with round tables draped in white cloth, centerpieces made of flowers he couldn't name, and a small army of waiters circulating with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A jazz band played softly in the corner, and everywhere Ethan looked, people in expensive clothes stood in tight clusters, laughing at jokes he wasn't part of. He grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing tray and found an empty spot near the back of the room, trying to blend into the wallpaper. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." Ethan turned. A woman stood beside him, holding her own glass of champagne, her expression halfway between amused and sympathetic. She was maybe late 20s, dark hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing a cocktail dress that probably cost more than his entire wardrobe. "That obvious?" Ethan asked. "Little bit," she smiled. "I'm Rachel. Marketing." Ethan. "Finance, Numbers guy. Guilty. Rachel took a sip of her drink. First time at one of these? Is it that obvious too? You're standing in the corner like you're waiting for someone to rescue you. She gestured toward the crowd. Pro tip, grab some food, find someone who looks more uncomfortable than you, and start a conversation. Makes the time go faster. Ethan glanced around. Everyone here looks pretty comfortable. Trust me, half of them are faking it. Rachel finished her champagne and set the glass on a nearby table. Anyway, good luck. Try to have fun. She disappeared into the crowd, and Ethan was alone again. He stayed near the wall for another 20 minutes, nursing his champagne and wondering how early he could leave without it being rude. Then someone tapped a microphone at the front of the room, and the conversations dimmed. Amelia Grant stepped onto the small stage. Ethan had seen pictures of her before. Press releases, company newsletters, the occasional business magazine, but seeing her in person was different. She wore a sleek black dress, her blonde hair falling just past her shoulders, and she moved with the kind of confidence that made everyone in the room pay attention without her having to demand it. "Good evening," she said, her voice clear and controlled. "Thank you all for being here tonight." The room applauded politely. Amelia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not going to keep you long," she continued. "I know you're all here for the food and the open bar, not to listen to me talk." A few people laughed. "But I did want to take a moment to acknowledge the work you've all put in this year. High On Group wouldn't be where it is without every single person in this room. So thank you, truly." More applause. Amelia said a few more things about quarterly performance and future goals, but Ethan stopped listening. He was watching the way she held herself, the way her smile stayed fixed even when her eyes looked tired. She wasn't just playing a part, she was performing, the same way he performed every morning when he told Lily everything was fine. The speech ended and the crowd dispersed back into their conversations. Ethan thought about leaving. He'd shown his face, done his duty. But then he saw Amelia step off the stage and slip through a side door that led to a hallway outside the ballroom. He didn't know why he followed her. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the look in her eyes that reminded him too much of his own reflection. The hallway was quiet, lit by dim sconces, and Amelia stood near a window at the far end, staring out at the city lights below. She didn't turn when Ethan approached, but she spoke anyway. "If you're here to tell me how inspiring that speech was, save it. I've already heard it 6 times tonight." Ethan stopped a few feet away. "I wasn't going to say that." Amelia glanced at him. "Then what were you going to say?" "I don't know." He shoved his hands into his pockets. "You looked like you needed a break." She studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed, short and sharp. "You're right, I did." Silence settled between them. Ethan didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Amelia turned back to the window. "You work in finance, right?" she asked. "Yeah, Ethan Cole. I'm terrible with names." She sipped her champagne. "But I remember the faces. That a CEO skill? More like a survival tactic." She set her glass on the windowsill. "How long have you been with the company?" 4 years. "You like it?" Ethan shrugged. "It pays the bills." As Amelia smiled faintly. "Honest answer, I appreciate that." She crossed her arms, her gaze still fixed on the city below. "Everyone else tonight has been telling me how much they love working here, how grateful they are, how inspired they feel. And you don't believe them." "I believe they're smart enough to know what to say to the person signing their checks." Ethan almost laughed. "Fair point." Another silence, longer this time. Amelia finally turned to face him fully. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you ever feel like you're just going through the motions? Like you're doing everything you're supposed to do, but none of it actually matters?" The question caught him off guard. Not because it was unexpected, but because it was exactly what he'd been thinking for the last 3 years. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I feel like that a lot." Amelia looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time all night, her smile wasn't a performance. "Me too." They stood there in the hallway, 2 strangers who'd somehow ended up in the same place at the same time, and for a moment the noise from the ballroom felt very far away. "You have kids?" Amelia asked. Ethan nodded. "A daughter, Lily. She's 9. "What's she like?" "Smart, too smart. Asks questions I don't know how to answer." Amelia smiled. "Sounds exhausting." "It is." Ethan hesitated. "But she's the only thing that makes sense anymore." Amelia's smile faded. She looked back out the window. "I don't have kids. I don't have much of anything, actually. Just the company. And a mother who thinks I'm wasting my life." "Are you?" "I don't know." She picked up her champagne glass again, but didn't drink. "I spent my whole life trying to prove I could run this place. And now that I have it, I'm not sure it was worth it." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. So he just stood there, and Amelia stood there, and the silence between them felt strangely comfortable. "You should get back," she said eventually. "People will notice if you're gone too long." "What about you?" "I'm the CEO. I can disappear whenever I want." She glanced at him. "Perks of the job." Ethan nodded and turned to leave. But then Amelia spoke again, her voice quieter. "Thank you." He looked back. "For what?" "For not pretending that." Ethan didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded and walked back toward the ballroom. But as he rejoined the crowd, he couldn't stop thinking about the way Amelia Grant had looked standing by that window, like someone who'd spent so long building walls that she'd forgotten how to let anyone in. The gala ended around 11. Ethan stayed longer than he'd planned, not because he was enjoying himself, but because leaving early felt like giving up. By the time he made it back to his car, his feet hurt and his tie felt like a noose. He drove home through empty streets, the city quiet and still. Mrs. Dawson was asleep on the couch when he walked in, and Lily was already in bed. Ethan thanked Mrs. Dawson, paid her, and waited until she left before collapsing onto the couch himself. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Amelia. I got your number from HR. I hope that's not weird." Ethan stared at the screen. "It's a little weird." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Fair. I'll delete it if you want." Ethan hesitated. He should say yes. This was his boss. This was the CEO of the entire company. This was a line that shouldn't be crossed. But he thought about the way she'd looked in that hallway, the exhaustion in her voice, the loneliness that mirrored his own. "Don't delete it." The 3 dots appeared again. Good. Ethan set his phone down and stared at the ceiling. He told himself it didn't mean anything. It was just a conversation. 2 people who happened to understand each other. But deep down, he knew it meant more than that. And that terrified him. The next morning, Ethan woke up to Lily shaking his shoulder. "Dad, you're going to be late." He groaned and checked his phone. 7:15. He'd overslept by half an hour. Crap. Lily stood beside the couch, already dressed, her backpack on. "I made my own lunch." Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You what?" "I made my own lunch. Peanut butter and jelly. It's in the fridge." He blinked at her. "Since when do you make your own lunch?" "Since today." She shrugged. "You look tired." Something tightened in Ethan's chest. He pulled her into a hug, maybe a little too tight, and kissed the top of her head. "Thanks, kiddo." "You're welcome." She squirmed free. "Now hurry up. I don't want to be late." Ethan rushed through the morning routine, skipping breakfast and downing a lukewarm cup of yesterday's coffee. They made it to school with 2 minutes to spare. Lily hopped out of the car, waved, and disappeared into the building without looking back. Ethan sat in the parking lot for a moment, watching the other parents drive away. His phone buzzed again. "You busy tonight? Amelia?" Ethan stared at the message. He should say yes. He should keep his distance. He should do the smart thing. Not really. Good. "Let's get dinner." His heart kicked hard against his ribs. Is that a good idea? Probably not. Ethan closed his eyes. He thought about Lily, about the life he'd built, about how careful he'd been to keep everything stable and safe. He thought about Claire, about the accident, about how much he'd lost. And then he thought about Amelia standing in that hallway, asking if he ever felt like none of it mattered. "Where?" "I'll text you the address, 7 o'clock. Ethan put his phone away and drove to work. He told himself it was just dinner. Just two people talking, nothing more. But as the day dragged on, he couldn't stop thinking about what might happen if it became something more. And for the first time in 3 years, that possibility didn't feel entirely terrifying. The restaurant Amelia chose was the kind of place Ethan would never walk into on his own. It sat tucked away on a quiet street downtown, the kind of spot that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. No sign out front, just an unmarked door with a small brass number plate. Inside, the lighting was low. The tables spaced far enough apart that conversation stayed private, and the waitstaff moved like shadows. Ethan arrived 5 minutes early and immediately regretted it. He stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, wondering if he should wait outside or go in. Before he could decide, a black car pulled up to the curb and Amelia stepped out. She wasn't wearing the polished CEO uniform tonight, just jeans, a cream sweater, and a leather jacket that looked expensive but worn in. Bob. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders, and without the armor of her work clothes, she looked younger, more real. "You're early," she said. "So are you." "I'm always early. Control thing." She gestured toward the door. "Come on. I'm starving." Inside, the hostess greeted Amelia by name and led them to a corner table near the back. Ethan sat down and tried not to look as out of place as he felt. The menu didn't have prices listed, which he'd heard was a bad sign. "Order whatever you want," Amelia said, not looking up from her own menu. "It's on me." "You don't have to do that, Ichi." "I know, but I'm doing it anyway." She set the menu down. "Besides, I'm the one who dragged you out here. Least I can do is buy you dinner." The waiter appeared, poured them water, and took their orders. Amelia got some kind of fish dish Ethan couldn't pronounce. He went with steak, medium rare, because it was the only thing on the menu he recognized. Once the waiter left, silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable exactly, but uncertain, like neither of them knew what they were doing here. "So," Amelia said finally, "how was your day?" Ethan almost laughed. "Really? We're doing small talk? I'm bad at this, okay? I don't do this often." "Do what?" "This." She gestured between them. "Dinner. With someone who's not a business contact or a reporter." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "When's the last time you went to dinner just because you wanted to?" Amelia thought about it. "I honestly can't remember." "That's depressing. Tell me about it." She picked up her water glass, then set it down without drinking. "What about you? When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to?" Ethan stared at the table. The honest answer was never. Everything he did was for Lily, or because it was expected, or because it kept the world from falling apart. Wanting things felt selfish, dangerous. "I don't know," he said. "Then we're both pretty pathetic." "Guess so." Amelia smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "At least we're honest about it." The food arrived, and they ate in silence for a while. The steak was good, better than anything Ethan cooked at home, but he barely tasted it. He kept glancing at Amelia, trying to figure out why she'd invited him here, what she wanted, what this was. "Can I ask you something?" she said eventually. "Sure. Your daughter, Lily." Amelia set her fork down. "What happened to her mom?" "Well, Ethan's chest tightened. He'd gotten good at deflecting this question over the years, at giving vague answers that didn't invite follow-up. But something about the way Amelia asked, direct, no pity in her voice, made him want to tell the truth. "Car accident," he said. 3 years ago. Drunk driver ran a red light." Amelia didn't say she was sorry. She didn't offer empty condolences or tell him everything happens for a reason. She just nodded, like she understood that some things didn't need commentary. "That why you're so careful?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "The way you move through the world, like you're trying not to break anything." Ethan looked at her. "Is it that obvious?" "To me, yeah, but I do the same thing." She picked up her wine glass, swirled it without drinking. "Different reasons, same result." "What's your reason?" Amelia hesitated. For a moment, Ethan thought she wouldn't answer. Then she set the glass down and met his eyes. "My father built Heon Group from nothing, spent 40 years turning it into what it is now. And when he died, he left it to me instead of my older brother." Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. My brother thinks I don't deserve it. My mother thinks I can't handle it. Half the board thinks I'm too young, and the other half thinks I'm too ruthless. So yeah, I'm careful, because if I slip once, they'll take everything. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He'd never thought about what it cost to be Amelia Grant. He just assumed success came easy to people like her. That sounds exhausting, he said. It is. She finally drank the wine. But it's all I have. That's not true. Isn't it? Amelia looked at him. I don't have friends. I don't have hobbies. I don't even have a plant because I'd forget to water it. All I have is the company and a reputation I can't afford to lose. Ethan leaned forward. Then why are you here? With me? The question hung in the air between them. Amelia stared at him for a long moment, and Ethan saw something crack in her expression, something vulnerable. Because I'm tired, she said quietly. I'm tired of pretending I have it all figured out. I'm tired of being alone in a room full of people. And when I talked to you last night, I didn't feel alone, so I wanted to feel that again. Ethan's heart was pounding. He should leave. He should pay for his half of the meal and walk out and never look back. This was his boss. This could ruin everything. But he didn't move. I feel the same way, he said. Amelia's expression softened. Yeah? Yeah. They finished dinner and walked outside into the cool night air. The street was empty, the city quiet around them. Amelia's car was still parked at the curb, but she didn't move toward it. I should go, Ethan said, but he didn't mean it. Probably. Amelia looked at him. But I don't want you to. Ethan knew what was about to happen. He knew it was a mistake. He knew it would complicate everything. But when Amelia stepped closer and kissed him, he didn't pull away. He kissed her back. Ethan woke up in a bed that wasn't his, in a room he didn't recognize, with sunlight cutting through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then he saw Amelia asleep beside him, her hair spread across the pillow, and everything came rushing back. The kiss, the drive to her apartment, the way she'd looked at him when she asked if he wanted to come inside. He sat up slowly, careful not to wake her, and checked his phone. 7:43. He'd missed 6 texts from Mrs. Dawson asking where he was, and one from Lily asking if he was okay. Shit, he muttered. Amelia stirred beside him. What's wrong? I need to go. Lily's probably freaking out. Amelia rubbed her eyes and sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. I'm sorry. I should have set an alarm. It's not your fault. Ethan found his jeans on the floor and pulled them on. I should have been more responsible. Ethan, Amelia's voice stopped him. Are you okay? He turned to look at her. She looked worried, like she thought he regretted what had happened. And maybe part of him did, but a bigger part of him didn't. I don't know, he said honestly. Amelia nodded. That's fair. Ethan finished getting dressed, grabbed his keys, and headed for the door. But before he left, he looked back at her one more time. I'll see you at work? Yeah. Amelia pulled her knees to her chest. See you at work. Ethan drove home faster than he should have, his mind racing. He tried to figure out what he was going to tell Lily, what excuse he could give, but nothing sounded believable. By the time he pulled into the driveway, he'd settled on the truth, or at least part of it. Mrs. Dawson was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, looking equal parts worried and annoyed. Where have you been? She demanded. I'm sorry. I should have called. Lily was up half the night worried about you. Guilt twisted in Ethan's gut. Where is she? Inside, getting ready for school. Mrs. Dawson softened slightly. She's okay, Ethan, but you need to communicate better. I know, I will. Mrs. Dawson nodded and left, and Ethan walked inside to find Lily sitting at the kitchen table, eating cereal in silence. She looked up when he came in, her expression unreadable. Hey, kiddo, Ethan said. Where were you? I'm sorry. I stayed out later than I planned. With who? Ethan hesitated. A friend. Lily stared at him. She was too smart to believe that, and they both knew it. But she didn't push. Okay, she said quietly. Ethan sat down beside her. I should have called. That's on me. It's fine. It's not fine I scared you. Lily set her spoon down. I thought something happened to you, like what happened to Mom. Ethan's chest ached. He pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. I'm okay, I promise. Nothing's going to happen to me. You don't know that. You're right. I don't. He pulled back and looked at her. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Brace it. Lily nodded, but she didn't look convinced, and Ethan couldn't blame her. He'd broken her trust, even if just for one night. And trust, once broken, didn't repair easily. Baike. Work was unbearable. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. He kept replaying the night before, the way Amelia had kissed him, the way she'd looked at him in the morning. He didn't know what it meant. He didn't know what happened next. Around noon, his phone buzzed. We need to talk. Amelia. Ethan stared at the message. 4 words that could mean 100 different things. He typed back. When? Tonight. My office. After everyone leaves. Ethan put his phone away and tried to focus on work, but the rest of the day dragged by in slow motion, every minute stretching longer than the last. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, most of the office had cleared out. Ethan waited until the floor was empty, then took the elevator up to the executive level. Amelia's office was at the end of a long hallway, behind a set of glass doors that made Ethan feel like he was walking into a fishbowl. He knocked once. Amelia's voice called from inside. Come in. She was standing by the window, looking out at the city below. She didn't turn when he entered. Close the door, she said. Ethan did. The silence in the room felt heavy, suffocating. I've been thinking about last night, Amelia said, about what it means, what it could cost. Ethan waited. His heart was pounding. I don't regret it, she continued, but I need to know if you do. I don't, Ethan said. Amelia finally turned to face him. Then we need to be smart about this. No one can know. Not yet. Why not? Because I'm your boss, Ethan. Because the board is already looking for reasons to undermine me. Because if they find out I'm involved with someone who works here, they'll use it against me. She crossed her arms. I'm not saying we can't see each other. I'm saying we need to be careful. Ethan understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. Okay, he said. Amelia walked toward him, stopping just a few feet away. I know this is complicated, and I know it's not fair to ask you to hide, but I need this job, Ethan. I need the company. It's all I have. I get it. Do you? Ethan met her eyes. Yeah, I do. They stood there for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Then Amelia closed the distance between them and kissed him, quick and desperate, like she was afraid it might be the last time. When she pulled away, her eyes were glassy. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. The next few weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful lies. Ethan and Amelia saw each other when they could, late nights after Lily went to bed, lunch breaks in out-of-the-way cafes, weekends when Mrs. Dawson could watch Lily. They were careful. No texts during work hours. No lingering looks in meetings. No slip-ups. But secrets had a way of becoming heavy, and Ethan felt the weight of it every time he lied to Lily about where he was going. I have to work late again, he'd say, and Lily would nod and pretend she believed him. But Ethan could see the doubt in her eyes, the distance growing between them. One night, after another late dinner with Amelia, Ethan came home to find Lily still awake, sitting on the couch in the dark. Why aren't you in bed? He asked. Couldn't sleep. Ethan sat down beside her. What's wrong? Lily didn't answer right away. She stared at the TV, which wasn't even on. Do you have a girlfriend? She asked finally. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? You're gone all the time. You're happy, but you're also sad. Like you don't know what you're feeling. She looked at him. So I figured you must have a girlfriend. Ethan didn't know what to say. He couldn't lie to her. Not about this. It's complicated, he said. That's a yes. Lily, I don't care if you have a girlfriend, Dad. Her voice cracked slightly. I just wish you'd tell me the truth. Ethan pulled her into a hug. I'm sorry. You're right. I should have told you. Who is she? Ethan hesitated. Someone I work with. Do you love her? The question hit him harder than he expected. Did he love Amelia? He didn't know. He cared about her, needed her in a way he hadn't needed anyone in years. But love? That word felt too big, too dangerous. I don't know yet, he said. Lily pulled away and looked at him. Just don't disappear, okay? I need you here. I'm not going anywhere, kiddo. I promise. But even as he said it, Ethan knew promises were fragile things, and the world had a way of breaking them. 3 weeks after that conversation, Amelia called him in the middle of the night. Ethan was half asleep when his phone buzzed, Amelia's name lighting up the screen. Hello? He mumbled. Ethan. Her voice was shaking. I need to see you. He sat up, suddenly awake. What's wrong? Just, please, can you come over? Now? Yes, now. Ethan looked at the clock. 1:30 in the morning. Lily was asleep down the hall. He couldn't just leave. Amelia, I can't. Please. She sounded like she was crying. I need you. Ethan closed his eyes. He thought about Lily, about his promise to stay. But he also thought about Amelia, alone in her apartment, falling apart. Okay, he said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He threw on clothes, checked on Lily to make sure she was asleep, and left a note on the kitchen counter in case she woke up. Then he drove across the city, breaking at least 3 traffic laws. Amelia's apartment was dark when he arrived. She answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, her eyes red and puffy. What happened? Ethan asked. She didn't answer. She just pulled him inside and collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest. Ethan held her, stroking her hair, waiting for her to calm down enough to talk. When she finally pulled away, her face was streaked with tears. I'm pregnant, she said. The words hit Ethan like a freight train. He stared at her, unable to process what she'd just said. What? I'm pregnant. Amelia's voice was barely a whisper. I took 3 tests. They all came back positive. Ethan's legs felt weak. He sat down on the couch, his mind spinning. Pregnant. Amelia was pregnant. With his child. How? He asked, then immediately felt stupid. He knew how. We were careful, Amelia said, but not careful enough. What was wrong? Ethan put his head in his hands. He thought about Lily, about the life he'd built, about how fragile everything suddenly felt. What do you want to do? He asked. Amelia sat down beside him. I don't know. I didn't plan for this. I don't know if I even want kids. Do you want to keep it? She looked at him, her eyes desperate. I don't know. Do you? Ethan didn't have an answer. He didn't know what he wanted. All he knew was that everything had just changed and there was no going back. We'll figure it out, he said, even though he had no idea how. Amelia leaned against him, and they sat there in silence. 2 people who'd stumbled into something far bigger than either of them had expected. And for the first time since Claire died, Ethan felt genuinely terrified. The next morning, Ethan drove home in a daze. Lily was already awake, eating cereal at the table, and she gave him a look when he walked in. Where were you? Something came up at work. At 2 in the morning? Ethan couldn't lie anymore. He sat down across from her. Lily, there's something I need to tell you. She set her spoon down, her expression guarded. Okay. Ethan took a breath. The person I've been seeing, she's pregnant. Lily stared at him. What? I know it's a lot, and I know it's not what you expected, but it's happening, and I need you to know. Lily's face went through about 6 different emotions in the span of 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, anger, and something that looked like betrayal. Are you serious? She asked. Yeah, I'm serious. So you're just, what, replacing Mom? No. Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Lily, no one could ever replace your mom. Then why are you doing this? Because sometimes life doesn't go the way you plan, and we have to deal with it anyway. Lily stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want a new family. I just want things to be normal. I know. No, you don't. Tears welled in her eyes. You don't know anything. She ran to her room and slammed the door, leaving Ethan alone in the kitchen, staring at the half-eaten bowl of cereal she'd left behind. He'd known this would be hard, but he hadn't expected it to hurt this much. Over the next week, everything started to unravel. Amelia decided to keep the baby, and they agreed to figure out the rest as they went. But secrets had a way of surfacing, especially in a place like Hion Group. Someone saw them together. Ethan didn't know who, didn't know when, but suddenly there were whispers in the office. People looking at him differently. Conversations that stopped when he walked into a room. Then the email came. It was sent anonymously to the entire company. No subject line. Just a single image attached. Ethan and Amelia, leaving a restaurant together, her hand on his arm, both of them smiling. The fallout was immediate. By noon, Ethan's desk phone was ringing off the hook. Marcus stopped by twice, not saying anything, just giving him this look like he'd witnessed a car accident. Rachel from marketing walked past without making eye contact. Even the intern who usually asked Ethan for help with Excel formulas suddenly had somewhere else to be. Ethan stared at his computer screen, the email still open, the photo mocking him. He looked happy in it. That was the worst part. He looked genuinely happy, and now the entire company knew. His cell phone buzzed. Amelia, my office, now. Ethan stood up, and the few people still pretending to work suddenly became very interested in their keyboards. He walked to the elevator, rode it up to the executive floor, and found Amelia's assistant standing outside her office, looking like she'd just swallowed glass. She's expecting you, the assistant said quietly. Ethan knocked once and went inside. Amelia stood behind her desk, arms crossed, her face pale. There were two other people in the room, a man in his 50s wearing a suit that cost more than Ethan's car, and a woman about Amelia's age with sharp eyes and a tablet clutched to her chest. Ethan Cole, the man said. I'm Richard Brennan, head of HR. This is Jennifer Ortiz, corporate counsel. Ethan's stomach dropped. This wasn't a conversation. This was an interrogation. Sit down, Brennan said, gesturing to a chair. Ethan sat. Amelia stayed standing, her jaw tight. I assume you've seen the email, mates, Brennan continued. Yeah. And is the photograph accurate? Are you and Ms. Grant involved in a personal relationship? Ethan glanced at Amelia. She gave him the smallest nod. Yes, he said. Brennan exhaled through his nose. How long has this been going on? A few weeks. And did either of you disclose this relationship to HR as required by company policy? Ethan looked at the floor. No. Jennifer spoke up, her voice clinical. Company policy clearly states that any romantic relationship between employees, particularly those involving a direct or indirect supervisory relationship, must be disclosed immediately. Failure to do so is grounds for disciplinary action up to and including termination. Ethan's chest tightened. Are you firing me? That depends, Brennan said. We need to determine whether there was any misconduct, any favoritism, conflicts of interest, abuse of power. There wasn't, Amelia said sharply. Ethan works in finance. I don't supervise him directly. We've had no professional interactions outside of standard company meetings. That may be true, Jennifer said, but perception matters. And right now the perception is that the CEO is romantically involved with a subordinate. That opens the company to liability. Amelia's hands balled into fists. So what are you suggesting? Brennan leaned back in his chair. For now, we're placing Mr. Cole on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Paid? Of course. Once we've reviewed the facts, we'll determine next steps. That's ridiculous, Amelia said. He hasn't done anything wrong. Ms. Grant, with all due respect, this isn't about right or wrong. It's about protecting the company. Brennan stood up. Mr. Colpelli, but, Cole, you'll need to clear out your desk and leave the building within the hour. We'll be in touch. Ethan felt numb. He nodded and stood, his legs barely holding him. Amelia stepped forward. Ethan, it's fine, he said, even though it wasn't. I'll go. He walked out of the office, rode the elevator back down, and packed his desk in silence while everyone pretended not to watch. Marcus came over once, handed him a cardboard box, and muttered, "This sucks, man." Ethan didn't respond. He just loaded his stuff into the box, grabbed his jacket, and walked out of High-On Group for what might be the last time. Outside, the October air was cold and sharp. Ethan sat in his car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, trying to figure out how everything had fallen apart so fast. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You don't belong with her. Walk away before it gets worse." Ethan stared at the message. Then another came through. "She's going to destroy you, just like she destroys everything." He deleted both texts and threw his phone onto the passenger seat. His hands were shaking. He needed to get home. He needed to check on Lily. He needed to figure out what the hell he was going to do next. But when he pulled into his driveway 20 minutes later, there were 3 reporters standing on his lawn. Ethan's heart stopped. One of them had a camera. Another held a microphone. The third was talking into a phone, gesturing toward Ethan's house. He stayed in the car, frozen. One of the reporters noticed him and started walking toward the driveway. Ethan locked the doors. The reporter knocked on the window. "Mr. Cole? Just a few questions about your relationship with Amelia Grant." Ethan didn't answer. He pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Dawson. "Hello? Is Lily with you?" Ethan asked. "Yes, she's here. She wanted to come over after school. Why? What's wrong?" "Don't let her leave, and don't let anyone near her. I'll explain later." "Ethan, you're scaring me." "Just keep her safe, please." He hung up and stared at the reporter still standing outside his car. The guy knocked again. "Mr. Cole, people want to know the truth. Did you seduce Miss Grant to advance your career, or was it the other way around?" Ethan's vision went red. He shoved open the car door, nearly hitting the reporter, and stepped out. "Get off my property!" The reporter stepped back, but he was smiling. "Just doing my job." "I don't care. Get off my lawn, or I'm calling the cops. Is it true Ms. Grant is pregnant?" Ethan's blood ran cold. "What?" "We have sources saying she's expecting. Care to comment?" Ethan's fists clenched. "Get out!" The reporter held up his hands in mock surrender and backed away, but the damage was done. If they knew about the pregnancy, then everyone would know soon. And once that happened, there'd be no containing it. Ethan went inside and locked the door behind him. He pulled the curtain shut, turned off all the lights, and sat on the couch in the dark, trying to breathe. His phone rang. "Amelia, did you see them?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yeah, they're outside my house. They're outside mine too, and my office. And apparently they've been camped outside Heon all afternoon." She sounded like she was on the verge of breaking. "Ethan, they know about the baby." "How?" "I don't know. Someone leaked it. Maybe HR, maybe the board. I don't know." Her voice cracked. "This is falling apart. What do we do? I don't know." She was crying now. "I don't know." Ethan closed his eyes. "Where are you?" "Still at the office. Brennan says I need to stay away from you until the investigation is over." "That's insane." "I know. But if I don't cooperate, they'll use it against me. They're already talking about calling an emergency board meeting." She took a shaky breath. "Ethan, they're going to try to remove me." "They can't do that." "Yes, they can. If they vote no confidence, I'm out. And this scandal gives them exactly the ammunition they need." Ethan didn't know what to say. He wanted to tell her it would be okay, that they'd figure it out, but he didn't believe it himself. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For all of this. For dragging you into my mess." Amelia laughed, bitter and broken. "You didn't drag me anywhere. I walked into this with my eyes open." She paused. "I should go. Just stay safe, okay? You too." The line went dead. Ethan sat in the dark for another hour, listening to the reporters outside talking to each other, their voices muffled but persistent. Eventually they left, but Ethan knew they'd be back. He called Mrs. Dawson and asked if Lily could spend the night. She agreed, no questions asked, which Ethan appreciated more than she'd ever know. Then he poured himself a drink he didn't want and sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "Last warning. End this now, or we'll end it for you." Ethan stared at the message. Then he turned his phone off and threw it across the room. He was so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of hiding, tired of feeling like the world was closing in on him. He thought about Claire. about how simple life had been before the accident, before the grief, before Amelia. He wondered if she'd be disappointed in him, or if she'd understand. He didn't have an answer. He just knew he couldn't keep doing this, but he also couldn't walk away. Not yet. The next morning, Ethan woke up to his phone ringing. He'd plugged it back in at some point during the night, and now it was vibrating across the nightstand. He grabbed it without looking at the screen. Hello? Mr. Cole, this is Catherine Grant. Ethan sat up so fast his head spun. Catherine Grant, Amelia's mother. He'd never spoken to her, never even met her, but he knew who she was. Everyone did. Hi, he said, his voice rough with sleep. I'll make this brief. I'd like to meet with you. Today, if possible. Why? Because we need to discuss my daughter and your role in her life. Ethan's stomach twisted. With all due respect, Mrs. Grant, I don't think that's a good idea. I disagree. And frankly, Mr. Cole, you don't have much of a choice. If you care about Amelia at all, you'll meet with me. The line went dead before Ethan could respond. He stared at his phone, his pulse pounding. This was a trap. It had to be. But if he didn't go, Catherine would find another way to make his life hell. And if there was even a chance she could help Amelia, he had to take it. He texted back the number she'd called from. When and where? The response came immediately. The Whitmore Hotel, Suite 12B, 2 o'clock. Ethan showered, got dressed, and drove across town to the Whitmore, a 5-star hotel that catered to people who wore watches worth more than Ethan's annual salary. The lobby was all marble and gold accents, and the concierge gave him a look that said he didn't belong. I'm here to see Catherine Grant, Ethan said. Suite 12B. The concierge made a call, then gestured toward the elevator. 12th floor. Ethan rode up in silence, his nerves buzzing. When the elevator doors opened, Catherine Grant was waiting in the hallway. She was in her late 50s, tall and elegant, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Ethan's car. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her expression was cold enough to freeze water. Mr. Cole, she said, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? Catherine's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. Not really. She led him into the suite, which was bigger than Ethan's entire house. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Catherine gestured to a chair. Sit. Ethan sat. Catherine remained standing, arms crossed. I'll get straight to the point, she said. My daughter is making a terrible mistake, and you're the reason. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Isn't it? Before you came along, Amelia was focused, driven. She had a clear path forward, and now? Catherine's voice was sharp. Now she's pregnant, her reputation is in ruins, and the board is circling like vultures. All because of you. I didn't ask for any of this. No, but you didn't walk away either. Catherine stepped closer. Do you have any idea what you've done? Amelia has spent her entire life proving she's worthy of running High On Group, and in a matter of weeks you've undone all of that. Ethan stood up. I'm not the villain here. Then what are you? Catherine's eyes were ice. A struggling single father who saw an opportunity and took it? A man who thought he could ride Amelia's coattails to a better life? That's not what happened. Then tell me what did happen. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you seduced my daughter for your own gain. Ethan's fists clenched. I care about her. Care. Catherine laughed, bitter and sharp. How noble. And what exactly do you plan to do with that care? Raise a child you can't afford? Drag Amelia down into your life of mediocrity? She's not being dragged anywhere. She made her own choice. A choice she'll regret. Catherine walked to a side table and picked up an envelope. She held it out to Ethan. $5 million. Take it and disappear. Leave the city, leave the company, leave Amelia alone. Let her fix this mess without you complicating things further. Ethan stared at the envelope. $5 million. Enough to give Lily the life she deserved. Enough to never worry about bills or rent or whether he could afford college. Enough to walk away and never look back. He took the envelope. Catherine's expression shifted, something like satisfaction crossing her face. Then Ethan tore the envelope in half and dropped it on the floor. "I'm not for sale," he said. Catherine's eyes narrowed. "You're a fool." "Maybe, but I'm not abandoning her. Even if it destroys her, she's stronger than you think." Catherine stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't know my daughter. Not really. You think you do, but you've only seen the version of her she wants you to see. The real Amelia? She's ruthless. She's calculating. And when this all falls apart, she'll blame you." Ethan met her gaze. "Then I'll deal with it." Catherine stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked to the window, her back to him. "Get out," she said. Ethan left without another word. His hands were shaking as he rode the elevator down, his heart pounding in his chest. He'd just turned down $5 million. He just made an enemy of one of the most powerful women in the city, and he had no idea if he'd made the right choice. But as he walked out of the Whitmore and into the cold afternoon air, he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. He felt certain. Ethan drove straight to Mrs. Dawson's house to pick up Lily. She answered the door with a worried expression. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Not really, but it will be." Lily appeared behind her, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Can we go home now?" "Yeah, kiddo. Let's go home." They drove in silence for a while. Lily stared out the window, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "People at school are talking." Ethan's stomach sank. "About what?" "About you. About the lady you're dating." Lily turned to look at him. "They're saying mean things." "What kind of things?" "That you're using her for money, that you're a bad person." Her voice was small. "Are you a bad person, Dad?" Ethan pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face her. "No, Lily, I'm not a bad person. I'm just someone who made things complicated." "Why?" "Because I met someone who made me feel less alone, and I didn't think about what might happen after." Lily was quiet for a moment. "Do you love her?" Ethan thought about it, really thought about it. Did he love Amelia? He cared about her. He needed her. He wanted to protect her. But love? "I think I do," he said. Lily nodded slowly. "Then I guess it's okay." "Yeah?" "Yeah, just don't disappear again. Promise?" Ethan reached over and squeezed her hand. "I promise." They drove the rest of the way home, and for the first time in days, Ethan felt like maybe things could work out. Then he pulled into the driveway and saw the reporters waiting again. There were more this time. At least a dozen, cameras and microphones ready, all of them swarming the car the second Ethan parked. He locked the doors and turned to Lily. "Stay in the car. Don't open the door. Don't roll down the window. Okay?" Lily's eyes were wide. "Dad, what's happening?" "Just stay here. I'll handle it." Ethan got out and immediately a wall of noise hit him. Questions shouted over each other, cameras flashing, microphones shoved in his face. "Mr. Cole, is it true you're the father of Amelia Grant's baby? Did you know she was a billionaire when you started the relationship? What do you say to accusations that you're a gold digger?" Ethan pushed through the crowd, trying to get to his front door. One reporter blocked his path. "Mr. Cole, your daughter's inside the car. How does she feel about all this?" Ethan's vision went red. "Get away from my daughter." "Just one question." "I said get away from her." Ethan shoved past the reporter and yanked open the car door, pulling Lily out and shielding her with his body. They ran to the front door while cameras clicked behind them, Lily's face pressed against Ethan's chest. Inside, Ethan locked the door and pulled all the curtains shut again. Lily was crying. "Why are they here?" she sobbed. "What did we do?" Ethan held her tight. "Nothing, baby. We didn't do anything." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. They'd done something. They'd fallen in love. And now they were paying the price. His phone rang. Amelia. "I saw the news. She said. Her voice was hollow. "They showed Lily's face. They put her on TV. Ethan's blood ran cold. "What? They're saying you're exploiting me, that you're using the pregnancy to secure money." Amelia sounded like she was barely holding it together. "Ethan, they're going after your daughter to get to us. Ethan sank onto the couch, Lily still clinging to him. This has to stop. I know. We need to do something, go public, make a statement, something. The board told me to stay silent. They said any comment I make will only make it worse. Screw the board, Ethan said. This is our life, not theirs. Amelia was quiet for a long moment. You're right. What? You're right. I'm done hiding. I'm done letting other people control the narrative. Her voice hardened. I'm calling a press conference. Amelia, no. I'm doing this. Tomorrow morning. And I'm telling them everything. Ethan's heart was racing. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Like it. The line went dead, and Ethan sat there holding Lily, wondering if Amelia's courage would save them or destroy them both. Outside, the reporters kept shouting questions into the darkening evening, their voices blending into a single roar of judgment and noise. And Ethan realized that no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same again. The press conference was scheduled for 10 in the morning at Hion Group headquarters. Ethan found out because it was all over the news by 7. Every channel showed the same image. Amelia Grant's official headshot alongside the words, "Breaking CEO to address scandal." Ethan sat at his kitchen table, coffee going cold in his hand, watching his phone light up with texts from people he hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone suddenly wanted to know if he was okay, if the rumors were true, if he needed anything. He ignored all of them except one from Marcus. Whatever happens today, you've got people in your corner. Don't forget that. Ethan typed back a quick thanks and set his phone down. Lily was still asleep upstairs, and he wanted to keep it that way for as long as possible. The reporters had finally left around midnight, but they'd be back soon. They always came back. His phone rang. Unknown number. Ethan almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Mr. Cole, this is David Marsh. I'm on the board at Hion Group. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Okay, I'm calling because I wanted you to know what's about to happen. In about an hour, several board members are going to make a motion to remove Amelia Grant as CEO. We have the votes. Ethan's stomach dropped. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know that whatever Ms. Grant says at that press conference won't matter. She's already lost. Marcia's voice was calm, almost bored. The best thing you can do is distance yourself. Make it clear this wasn't your idea. Save what's left of your reputation. And throw her under the bus. I'm trying to help you. No, you're not. You're trying to make me complicit. Ethan stood up. Thanks for the heads up, but I'm not interested. He hung up before Marsh could respond. His hands were shaking. They were really going to do it. They were going to destroy Amelia just to protect their own interests. Ethan checked the time. 8:30. The press conference was in 90 minutes. He had to be there. He went upstairs and gently shook Lily awake. Hey, kiddo, I need you to get up. She groaned and rolled over. It's too early. I know, but something important is happening, and I need to be there. Lily opened her eyes, suddenly alert. Is it about her, the lady? Yeah, it's about her. Lily sat up. Are you going to be on TV? Maybe. I don't know. She studied his face. You're scared. Ethan didn't lie. Yeah, I am. Lily climbed out of bed and wrapped her arms around him. It's going to be okay, Dad. Ethan held her tight, wishing he could believe that. He called Mrs. Dawson and arranged for Lily to spend the day there again. By the time he dropped her off and drove downtown, it was 9:45. The street outside Hion Group was chaos. News vans lined the curb, reporters stood in clusters, and security guards formed a barrier at the entrance. Ethan parked in a garage 2 blocks away and walked toward the building. He kept his head down, but someone recognized him anyway. That's him! That's Ethan Cole! Suddenly, cameras were in his face, microphones shoved toward him, voices shouting questions he couldn't process. Ethan pushed through, security guards clearing a path, and he made it inside just as someone grabbed his arm. It was Jennifer Ortiz, the corporate lawyer. Her expression was grim. What are you doing here, Sheehan? She demanded. I'm here for Amelia. This is a terrible idea. If you're seen with her, I don't care. Jennifer stared at him, then sighed. Fine, follow me. She led him through the building to a small conference room near the back. Amelia was inside, standing by the window, wearing a navy suit that made her look both powerful and fragile. She turned when Ethan walked in. You came, she said. Of course I came. Amelia crossed the room and threw her arms around him. Ethan held her, feeling how tense she was, how much she was holding back. I'm terrified, she whispered. Me too. She pulled back and looked at him. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, but her jaw was set. The board's going to try to remove me. David Marsh called me this morning and told me to resign quietly, said it would be easier for everyone. What did you say? I told him to go to hell. Amelia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. So now they're going to do it the hard way. Can they really remove you? If they have enough votes, yeah. My father set up the board structure to protect against hostile takeovers, but he never imagined his own board would turn on me. She took a shaky breath. I've spent the last 3 years fighting to prove I deserve this, and I'm about to lose it all. Ethan took her hand. Then we fight back. How? Ethan, I'm pregnant with your child. The media is already painting me as reckless and irresponsible. If I go out there and defend us, they'll just use it against me. Maybe. But if you don't, they win by default. Amelia looked at him for a long moment. You're asking me to risk everything. I'm asking you to tell the truth. A knock on the door interrupted them. Jennifer poked her head in. It's time. Amelia nodded. She squeezed Ethan's hand once, then let go and walked toward the door. Ethan followed her down the hallway to the main conference room where the press conference was set up. Rows of chairs filled with reporters, cameras on tripods, lights so bright they made Ethan's eyes water. At the front of the room was a podium with the Hion Group logo on it. Behind the podium sat 6 board members, all of them looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. David Marsh was in the center, his expression neutral. Amelia walked to the podium. Ethan stayed near the side of the room, out of the camera's direct line of sight, but close enough that Amelia could see him. She adjusted the microphone and the room fell silent. Thank you all for coming, Amelia began. Her voice was steady, controlled. I'm here today to address the rumors and speculation surrounding my personal life. I know there's been a lot of talk, a lot of judgment, and a lot of misinformation. So I'm going to set the record straight. Go bum. She paused, her eyes scanning the room. Yes, I am in a relationship with Ethan Cole. Yes, I am pregnant. And no, I am not ashamed of either of those things. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and Amelia raised her hand for silence. I understand that the situation is complicated. I understand that some people believe I've compromised my position as CEO, but I want to be very clear about something. Her voice hardened. My personal life does not define my professional capability. I have led this company through record growth over the past 3 years. I have increased shareholder value, expanded into new markets, and created thousands of jobs. My relationship with Ethan does not change any of that. One reporter stood up. Ms. Grant, isn't it true that Mr. Cole is a subordinate employee? Doesn't that create a conflict of interest? Ethan works in the finance department. We have no direct professional relationship. But to address the larger question, yes, there is a power imbalance. And that's something we've had to navigate carefully. We didn't handle everything perfectly. We should have disclosed the relationship earlier, but that doesn't make it wrong. Another reporter jumped in. What about the accusations that Mr. Cole pursued you for financial gain? Amelia's expression went cold. Those accusations are false and offensive. Ethan is a good man who's been dragged through the mud because of his association with me. He didn't ask for any of this. And the fact that people are questioning his character says more about society's biases than it does about him. Ms. Grant, a woman in the front row called out. Do you plan to marry Mr. Cole? Amelia hesitated. That's not something I'm prepared to discuss right now. But you're having his child, don't you think? What I think, Amelia interrupted, her voice sharp, is that my family planning decisions are none of your business. Next question. The reporters kept firing questions, but Amelia handled each one with the same controlled precision. Ethan watched her, equal parts terrified and in awe. She was defending them, defending him in front of the entire world. Then David Marsh stood up. Ms. Grant, if I may, his voice cut through the noise, I think it's important to address the elephant in the room. Amelia turned to face him. And what would that be? David? Your judgment. This relationship, this pregnancy, it shows a fundamental lack of the discipline and foresight required to lead a company like Hion Group. Marsh looked directly at the cameras, which is why the board will be voting this afternoon on a motion to remove you as CEO. The room exploded again. Amelia didn't flinch. Is that so? She said calmly. It is. We've lost confidence in your ability to lead, and I believe the shareholders will agree. Amelia stepped away from the podium and walked toward Marsh. The cameras followed her every move. Let me ask you something, David, she said. When my father was CEO, he had 3 affairs. One with his secretary, one with a board member's wife, and one with a woman 30 years younger than him. Did you call for his removal? Marsh's face went red. That's different. How? How is it different? Your father didn't get anyone pregnant. No, he just paid them off and buried the stories, which, by the way, you helped him do. Amelia crossed her arms. So don't stand there and lecture me about judgment when you enabled far worse behavior from a man just because he was a man. Marsh opened his mouth, but no words came out. Marsh opened his... Amelia turned back to the reporters. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. But I refuse to be held to a different standard because of my gender. And I refuse to apologize for choosing to have a family. She looked directly into the camera. If the board votes to remove me, so be it. But they'll have to do it knowing that they're punishing me for something they overlooked in my father for decades. The room was silent. Even the reporters had stopped shouting. Amelia walked back to the podium. I have one more thing to say. To everyone watching, to everyone who's judged me and Ethan without knowing us, I want you to know something. Living honestly is hard. Loving someone is hard. Building a life with another person is hard. But living a lie would have been harder. And I refuse to do that anymore. She stepped away from the podium and walked toward Ethan. The cameras followed her every step. She stopped in front of him, and for a moment they just looked at each other. I'm done hiding, she said quietly. Ethan took her hand. Good. The room erupted in questions, but Amelia ignored them. She walked out with Ethan beside her, their hands linked, cameras flashing behind them like fireworks. They didn't stop until they reached the parking garage. Amelia leaned against Ethan's car, her whole body shaking. I can't believe I just did that, she said. You were incredible. I might have just ended my career. Maybe. But you told the truth. Amelia laughed, shaky and unsteady. The truth. What good is the truth if it costs me everything? It's still the truth. But they stood there in the cold garage, the sound of the city muffled around them. Ethan pulled Amelia close, and she buried her face in his chest. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. That's not comforting. I know. Amelia pulled back and wiped her eyes. The board vote is in 4 hours. I need to be there. Do you want me to come? No. This is something I have to do alone. She kissed him, quick and desperate. But after, whatever happens, we'll figure it out. Okay? Okay. She got in her car and drove away, leaving Ethan standing in the garage alone. He checked his phone, 73 missed calls, 112 texts. He ignored all of them and drove home. The reporters were back, of course. More of them this time. Ethan pushed through without answering questions and locked himself inside. He turned on the TV just in time to see the replay of the press conference. Every channel was showing it. Amelia's face, fierce and unafraid. Her words echoing across the screen. The moment she took Ethan's hand and walked out. His phone rang. Lily. Dad, I saw you on TV. Yeah? You looked really brave. Ethan smiled despite everything. Thanks, kiddo. Is she going to be okay? I hope so. Me too. Lily paused. I think I like her, Dad, even though everything's weird. Ethan's throat tightened. Yeah, me too. He hung up and sat down on the couch, staring at the TV. The pundits were already tearing Amelia apart, debating whether she'd been courageous or foolish, whether her speech would help or hurt. Ethan turned it off. 4 hours felt like forever. Ethan tried to distract himself with chores, with emails, with anything. But his mind kept going back to Amelia, sitting in that boardroom, waiting to hear if her life's work was about to be taken away. At 3 o'clock, his phone rang. Amelia. "Hey," he said. "How'd it go?" There was a long pause. Then Amelia laughed, and it sounded like relief. "I won." Ethan's heart leapt. "What?" "I won." The vote was 7-5 against removal. Marsh tried to get enough votes, but one board member refused to go along with it. Said my father would have been ashamed of them for turning on me. Her voice cracked. "Ethan, I still have my job." Ethan sank onto the couch, his whole body flooding with relief. "That's incredible." "I know, I can't believe it." She took a shaky breath. "But there's a condition. The board wants me to issue a formal apology for not disclosing the relationship, and they want me to put out a statement saying, we're taking a break until after the baby's born." Ethan's relief turned to ice. "What?" "It's optics. They want to show that I'm prioritizing the company, that I'm not distracted." "Amelia, we're not taking a break." "I know, but we have to make it look like we are, at least publicly." Ethan stood up, anger rising in his chest. "So you're asking me to lie? I'm asking you to be patient, just until things calm down." "Things aren't going to calm down, they're just going to get worse." "Ethan, please, I just fought to keep my job. I can't lose it now." "And what about us? What about the baby?" "Nothing changes. We'll still see each other. We'll just be more careful." Ethan laughed, bitter and sharp. "More careful." "Right, because that worked so well the first time." "Ethan, no, I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending. You stood up there today and said you were done living a lie, and now you're asking me to do exactly that. This is different." "How?" Amelia was silent for a long moment. "Because I'm scared. I'm scared that if I push too hard, I'll lose everything. And I can't lose this, Ethan. I can't." "Whoosh, whoosh, mercy." Ethan closed his eyes. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that they could fight this together. But he also understood. He understood fear. He understood the weight of carrying something you couldn't afford to lose. "Okay," he said quietly. "We'll do it your way. Thank you." "But Amelia, this can't last forever. At some point, we have to stop hiding." "I know, and we will. I promise." They hung up, and Ethan sat in the silence of his living room, wondering if Amelia's promise was one she'd be able to keep. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the walls. And somewhere in the city, the reporters were still talking, still dissecting, still judging. But for now, Amelia had won, and that had to be enough. Bucket. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange, uncomfortable limbo. Ethan went back to work after HR cleared him, and life at High On Group returned to something resembling normal. People still whispered when he walked by, still gave him looks, but no one said anything directly. Marcus clapped him on the back, his first day back, and said, "Good to have you here, man." That was the closest thing to an acknowledgement Ethan got. Amelia kept her distance. They texted, but it was always brief, always careful. She sent updates about doctor's appointments, about how she was feeling, about the baby. But they didn't see each other, not in person. The board's mandate had been clear, and Amelia was following it to the letter. Ethan hated it. He hated pretending they weren't together, hated the forced distance, hated watching Amelia post polished corporate photos on social media while knowing she was going through all of this alone. Lily noticed. She always noticed. "You're sad again," she said one night over dinner. Ethan looked up from his barely touched plate. "I'm fine, kiddo." "No, you're not. You're sad like you were after Mom died." Ethan set his fork down. "It's not the same." "Then what is it?" "What?" Ethan didn't know how to explain it. "It's complicated. That's what adults always say when they don't want to tell the truth." She wasn't wrong. Ethan sighed and leaned back in his chair. "I miss her, that's all." "The baby's mom?" "Yeah." "Can't you just go see her?" "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because the board said so. Because the media's still watching. Because Amelia's scared of losing everything she's worked for. Because sometimes people need space," Ethan said instead. Lily frowned. "That's dumb." Yeah, it is. That night, after Lily went to bed, Ethan texted Amelia, I miss you. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I miss you too. When can I see you? I don't know. Soon. Ethan stared at the screen. Soon. That word was starting to lose all meaning. I need to see you, Amelia. Not in a month. Not next week. Now. The reply took longer this time. Okay. Tomorrow night. My place. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest, finally. The next evening, he told Lily he had to work late again. She gave him a look that said she didn't believe him, but she didn't argue. Mrs. Dawson came over, and Ethan drove across the city to Amelia's apartment. She answered the door in sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exhausted. Hey, she said. Hey! They stood there for a moment, neither of them knowing what to say. Then Amelia stepped forward and kissed him, and everything else fell away. Inside, the apartment was dark, except for a few lamps. Amelia led him to this couch, and they sat down, close, but not touching. How are you feeling? Ethan asked. Tired, nauseous, scared. She looked at him. But better now that you're here. Ethan took her hand. We can't keep doing this. I know. The hiding, the pretending, it's killing me. I know. Amelia's voice cracked. It's killing me too. Then why are we doing it? Because I don't know what else to do. She pulled her hand away and stood up, pacing to the window. The board's watching me. The media's watching me. If I make one wrong move, they'll use it to destroy everything. So what's the plan? We hide until the baby's born? Until he's in college? That's not fair, Seth. Isn't it? Ethan stood up. You said you were done hiding. You said you were going to live honestly. But here we are, sneaking around like we're doing something wrong. Amelia turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. I'm trying, Ethan. I'm trying so hard to keep everything from falling apart. But I don't know how much longer I can do this. Ethan crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. She sobbed against his chest, her whole body shaking. Then stop trying to do it alone, he said. Let me help. How? I don't know, but we'll figure it out, together. Amelia pulled back and looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. What if we can't? Then we'll fail together, but at least we won't be hiding. She laughed through her tears. You're an idiot. Yeah, but I'm your idiot. Amelia kissed him again, and this time it felt like a promise. They spent the rest of the night talking, planning, trying to figure out a way forward. By the time Ethan left, the sun was starting to rise. He drove home through empty streets, exhausted but hopeful. Maybe they could do this. Maybe they could find a way to make it work. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan actually believed it. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in January. Ethan was half asleep when his phone started buzzing on the nightstand, Amelia's name flashing across the screen. He grabbed it before the second ring. Hello? Ethan. Her voice was tight with pain. Something's wrong. He was out of bed before she finished the sentence. What kind of wrong? I'm bleeding. Not a lot, but enough. And the contractions, she gasped. They're too early. The baby's not supposed to come for another 3 weeks. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Where are you? Home. I called an ambulance. They're on their way. I'm coming. Ethan, you don't have to. I'm coming. He hung up and threw on clothes, his hands shaking so badly he could barely zip his jeans. He ran down the hall and knocked on Lily's door. Lily, wake up. She appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. What's wrong? The baby's coming. I need to go to the hospital. Lily's eyes went wide. Is she okay? I don't know yet. Ethan grabbed his keys from the dresser. I'm calling Mrs. Dawson. You're going to stay with her until I get back. Dad, I'll call you as soon as I know something. I promise. He dialed Mrs. Dawson while running to the car, and she answered on the third ring, groggy but alert. Ethan explained in rushed sentences, and she told him to bring Lily over immediately. 5 minutes later, Lily was on Mrs. Dawson's porch, still in her pajamas, and Ethan was speeding toward the hospital. The roads were empty at this hour, streetlights casting yellow pools on the asphalt. Ethan ran 2 red lights and didn't care. His mind was racing faster than the car. 3 weeks early, bleeding, contractions. None of that sounded good. He pulled into the hospital parking lot and ran inside. The emergency room was too bright, sterile, the smell of antiseptic sharp in his nose. He went straight to the front desk. Amelia Grant. She was brought in by ambulance. The receptionist typed something into her computer. "Are you family?" "I'm the father of the baby." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "4th floor, labor and delivery." Ethan took the elevator up, his leg bouncing the entire ride. When the doors opened, he followed the signs until he found the nurse's station. "Amelia Grant," he said again. "I'm Ethan Cole. I'm the father," a nurse finished. She was in her 40s, her expression kind but professional. "She's in room 408, down the hall, last door on the left." "Box qua oitis scheit." Ethan didn't wait. He walked quickly down the corridor, his heart pounding, and pushed open the door to 408. Amelia was in the hospital bed, wearing a gown, her face pale and drawn. An IV line ran into her arm, and monitors beeped softly beside her. She looked up when Ethan came in, and relief flooded her expression. "You're here," she said. "Of course I'm here." Ethan crossed the room and took her hand. "What did the doctors say?" "The bleeding stopped. They think it was just stress on the placenta, but they're monitoring me. And the contractions? They're real. The baby's coming tonight." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Tonight?" "They tried to stop it, but it's not working. He's coming whether we're ready or not." She squeezed his hand. "I'm scared, Ethan." "Me too, suck." A doctor came in then, a woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back in a bun. She introduced herself as Dr. Patel and checked the monitors. "How are you feeling, Ms. Grant?" "Like I'm about to have a baby 3 weeks early." Dr. Patel smiled faintly. "Well, you're not wrong. The good news is that at 37 weeks, the baby's lungs should be developed enough. We'll monitor closely, but I don't anticipate major complications." "And if there are complications?" Amelia asked. "We have an NICU team on standby, but let's not borrow trouble. Right now, everything looks stable." Dr. Patel turned to Ethan. "You're the father?" "Yeah." "Good. She's going to need you." She checked the IV and made a note on her clipboard. "We'll check back in an hour. Try to rest if you can." She left, and the room fell quiet except for the beeping monitors. Amelia closed her eyes, her hand still gripping Ethan's. "I didn't think it would happen like this," she said. "What do you mean?" "I thought I'd have more time to figure everything out, to get ready, to—" She opened her eyes and looked at him. "I'm not ready, Ethan." "Neither am I." "Well, then how are we supposed to do this?" Ethan didn't have an answer. He just held her hand and stayed. The contractions got worse over the next few hours. Amelia tried to breathe through them, but Ethan could see the pain written across her face. He stayed beside her, wiping her forehead with a cold cloth, telling her she was doing great, even though he had no idea if that was true. Around 5 in the morning, Dr. Patel came back with a nurse. "We're at 8 centimeters. It won't be long now." Amelia's grip on Ethan's hand tightened. "I can't do this." "Yes, you can," Ethan said. "I'm serious. I can't." Another contraction hit, and she cried out. Ethan felt helpless, useless, like he should be doing something but didn't know what. "You're almost there, Doctor," Patel said calmly. "Just a little longer." By 6:30, Amelia was fully dilated, and the room transformed into controlled chaos. Nurses wheeled in equipment, Dr. Patel pulled on gloves, and Ethan stood at Amelia's side, his hand numb from how tightly she was holding it. "Okay, Amelia," Dr. Patel said. "Next contraction. I need you to push." Amelia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Ethan leaned close. "You've got this," he whispered. "I'm right here." The contraction came, and Amelia pushed. Then another, and another. It felt like forever and no time at all. Ethan had never felt so terrified and so useless in his life. Then, at 7:14 in the morning, a cry filled the room. Ethan's breath caught. Dr. Patel lifted a small, red, screaming baby into view. "It's a boy," she said, smiling. Amelia sobbed. Ethan felt tears streaming down his own face, his chest so tight he could barely breathe. Dr. Patel handed the baby to a nurse who cleaned him quickly and wrapped him in a blanket. Then she brought him over and placed him in Amelia's arms. The baby was tiny, his face scrunched up, his fists waving. Amelia stared down at him like she couldn't believe he was real. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, Noah." Ethan reached out and touched the baby's hand. Noah's fingers curled around Ethan's thumb, and something inside Ethan cracked wide open. This was his son. His son. Amelia looked up at him, tears still streaming down her face. "We made him." "Yeah," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "We did." They sat there for a long time, just staring at Noah, while the world outside kept spinning and none of it mattered. The next few hours passed in a blur. The NICU team checked Noah and declared him healthy, just small. Amelia was moved to a recovery room and Ethan stayed with her, unwilling to leave. Around noon, he finally stepped out to call Lily. "Dad?" She answered on the first ring. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, kiddo, everything's okay. You have a baby brother." There was a pause. Then quietly, "Really?" "Really, his name is Noah." "Is he cute?" Ethan smiled. "He's the cutest." "Can I meet him?" "Soon. I promise." After he hung up, Ethan leaned against the wall and let himself breathe. He was exhausted, his body running on adrenaline and caffeine, but he didn't care. Noah was here. He was healthy. That was all that mattered. When he went back into the room, Amelia was sitting up in bed, Noah asleep in her arms. She looked up when Ethan came in. "I was thinking," she said. "About what?" "About what happens next. About how we're going to do this." Ethan sat down beside her. "We'll figure it out." "That's what you always say." "Because it's true." Amelia looked down at Noah. "I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to pretend we're not a family." "Then don't." "But the board, screw the board." Ethan's voice was firm. "You stood in front of the entire world and told the truth. You fought for your job, and you won. If they have a problem with you being a mother, that's on them, not you." Amelia's eyes filled with tears again. "What if I lose everything? Then we'll figure it out, together." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple, but it's worth it." They sat there in silence, Noah sleeping between them, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of something stronger. A knock on the door interrupted them. A nurse poked her head in. "Miss Grant, you have the visitor." Amelia frowned. "Who?" The door opened wider, and Catherine Grant stepped inside. Ethan's entire body went rigid. Amelia's mother looked exactly as she had the last time he'd seen her, elegant, composed, untouchable. But her eyes were different, softer. "Mom, Amelia said, her voice tight. "What are you doing here?" Catherine walked to the bed and looked down at Noah. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she reached out and gently touched the baby's hand. "He's beautiful," she said quietly. Amelia stared at her. "I thought you didn't approve." "I didn't." Catherine looked up, and there were tears in her eyes. "I thought you were making a mistake. I thought this man," she glanced at Ethan, "I thought he was using you, and I tried to stop it." "You offered me $5 million to disappear," Ethan said flatly. "I did. And you turned it down." Catherine's expression shifted, something like respect crossing her face. "I've spent the last 3 months watching you two, watching how you handled the media, the board, the scrutiny, and I realized something. I was wrong." Amelia's mouth fell open. "What?" "I was wrong," Catherine repeated. "Your father built an empire, but he was a terrible husband and a worse father. He cheated, he lied, and I enabled it because I thought that was what it meant to be powerful. But watching you," her voice cracked, "you're stronger than he ever was, because you chose honesty over convenience, and I almost destroyed that." Tears streamed down Amelia's face. "Mom." Catherine sat down on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry, Amelia. I'm sorry I didn't support you. I'm sorry I tried to control your life. And I'm sorry I almost cost you the one thing that actually matters. Amelia reached out and took her mother's hand. They sat there for a moment, 3 generations in one room. And Ethan felt like he was witnessing something sacred. Can I hold him? Catherine asked. Amelia hesitated, then carefully passed Noah to her mother. Catherine cradled the baby in her arms, staring down at him with an expression Ethan had never seen on her face before. Wonder. Hello, Noah, she whispered. I'm your grandmother, and I promise I'm going to do better by you than I did by your mother. Ethan looked at Amelia. She was crying openly now, but she was smiling too. He reached over and squeezed her hand. See, he said quietly, we're figuring it out. Okay. Over the next few days, the hospital room became a revolving door of visitors. Lily came with Mrs. Dawson and spent an hour holding Noah, whispering to him about all the things she was going to teach him. Marcus stopped by with flowers and a card signed by half the finance department. Even Jennifer Ortiz, the corporate lawyer, sent a gift basket. But the biggest surprise came on day 3, when David Marsh showed up. Ethan was in the room alone with Amelia when the knock came. Marsh stepped inside, looking uncomfortable. Ms. Grant, he said, may I have a word? Amelia's expression hardened. If you're here to tell me I need to resign, you can leave now. I'm not. Marsh shifted his weight. I'm here to apologize. Ethan and Amelia exchanged a glance. Marsh cleared his throat and continued. I opposed you from the beginning. I thought you were too young, too inexperienced, too... He paused. Too much like your father in all the wrong ways. And when this situation arose, I saw it as confirmation of my worst fears. And now? Amelia asked coldly. Now I see that I was projecting my own biases onto you. Your father was reckless. You're not. You made a choice, owned it, and faced the consequences head on. That takes more courage than I gave you credit for. He looked at Noah, sleeping in Amelia's arms. And more importantly, I realized that punishing you for having a family would make us complicit in the same sexist double standard we claim to oppose. Amelia studied him for a long moment. So what changed your mind? My speech? The public backlash? No. Marsh's voice was quiet. My daughter called me. She's 28, works in tech, and she told me that if her company treated her the way I was treating you, she'd sue them into the ground. And then she told me I was being a hypocrite. He smiled faintly. She was right. Amelia didn't smile back. You tried to destroy me. I did. And I failed. And I'm glad I did. Marsh took a breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'll be voting in your favor going forward. And I'll be making sure the rest of the board does the same. He turned and left before Amelia could respond. The door clicked shut, and silence filled the room. Did that just happen? Amelia asked. Ethan laughed. I think it did. I don't know if I believe him. You don't have to, but at least he's not actively trying to ruin your life anymore. Amelia looked down at Noah. This is so strange. A week ago, I thought I'd lost everything. And now you have everything that actually matters, Ethan finished. She looked at him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise, I'm just stubborn. Amelia laughed, and it was the first time Ethan had heard her laugh without tension behind it in months. 2 weeks later, Ethan and Amelia brought Noah home, not to Amelia's sterile downtown apartment, but to Ethan's house. It was cramped and cluttered, and the plumbing made weird noises, but it was theirs. Lily had prepared by decorating Noah's room with drawings she'd made at school. Stick figures of their family, all holding hands, with a son in the corner that had a smiley face. Ethan stood in the doorway, staring at the drawings, and felt his throat tighten. You okay? Amelia asked, coming up behind him with Noah in her arms. Yeah. Ethan's voice was rough. Just thinking about how much has changed. Good change or bad change? Good. Definitely good. That night, after they'd gotten Noah settled and Lily had gone to bed, Ethan and Amelia sat on the couch in the living room. Noah was asleep in a bassinet beside them, his tiny chest rising and falling steadily. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Amelia said quietly, like this is all going to fall apart. It's not, Ethan said. How do you know? Because we're not hiding anymore. We're not pretending. We're just living. Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm still scared. Me too. But I think that's okay. They sat there in the dark, watching Noah sleep, and Ethan thought about everything they'd been through. The secrecy, the scandal, the fear, the board meetings and press conferences and midnight phone calls, all of it had led here, to this quiet moment in a cramped living room with a sleeping baby, and a future that was uncertain, but theirs. I love you, Amelia said suddenly. Ethan turned to look at her. She was staring at him, her eyes serious. I should have said it sooner, she continued, but I was scared. Scared that if I said it out loud, it would make everything more real, more dangerous. Ethan cupped her face in his hands. I love you too. I think I have since that night at the gala. Amelia kissed him, slow and gentle, and for the first time in months, everything felt right. Peace. 6 months passed. Noah grew, started smiling, started sleeping through the night. Lily became the world's most devoted big sister, constantly reading to him and showing him her favorite books. Amelia went back to work but kept reasonable hours, and the board stopped questioning her every move. Catherine became a fixture in their lives, showing up every weekend with gifts and apologies and a genuine desire to be better. She and Amelia were still working through years of damage, but they were trying. That was something. Ethan got a promotion at work, not because of Amelia, but because he was good at his job. Marcus threw him a party, and half the office showed up, and no one mentioned the scandal. It was like it had never happened, but Ethan knew it had. He saw it in the way Amelia sometimes woke up at night, checking her phone for negative press. He saw it in the way Lily sometimes asked if the reporters were coming back. The scars were there, but they were healing. One Saturday in July, Ethan took everyone to the park. Lily pushed Noah in the stroller while Amelia walked beside Ethan, their hands linked. The sun was warm, the air smelled like cut grass, and for a moment everything felt impossibly normal. You know what I realized? Amelia said. What? I spent my whole life chasing success, trying to prove I was good enough, smart enough, strong enough, and I thought if I achieved enough, I'd finally feel like I mattered. She looked at Ethan. But none of that ever made me happy. This does. Ethan squeezed her hand. You matter because you're you, not because of what you've achieved. I'm starting to believe that. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Ahead of them, Lily was making faces at Noah, who was giggling and reaching for her. Ethan watched them and felt something settle in his chest. This was what he'd been missing for so long. Not perfection, not a life without problems. Just people who loved each other, trying their best, failing sometimes, and getting back up anyway. Hey, Amelia said, pulling him out of his thoughts. Thank you. For what? For not giving up. For staying when it got hard. Ethan stopped walking and turned to face her. You did the same for me. I guess we're both stubborn. Guess so. They kissed there in the middle of the park, and Lily made gagging noises, and Noah laughed, and Ethan thought this right here, was exactly what happiness was supposed to feel like. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of love strong enough to survive it. Walk. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Ethan stood in Noah's room, watching his son breathe. He thought about Claire, about the life they'd planned that had been ripped away. He thought about the years of grief that followed, the loneliness, the fear that he'd never feel whole again. And he thought about Amelia, about how she'd stumbled into his life at a corporate gala he hadn't wanted to attend, and how everything had changed because two lonely people had been brave enough to admit they were lonely. Life didn't follow a script. It didn't care about your plans, or your fears, or your carefully constructed walls. It just happened, messy and complicated and beautiful. And sometimes, if you were lucky, it gave you a second chance. Ethan leaned down and kissed Noah's forehead. You're loved, little man, he whispered. More than you'll ever know. He left the room and found Amelia in the kitchen, making tea. She smiled when she saw him. You okay? She asked. Yeah. Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind. I'm good. Good. She leaned back against him. Because this is just the beginning. Ethan rested his chin on top of her head and looked out the window at the quiet street beyond. Somewhere out there, the world was still spinning, still judging, still demanding perfection. But in here, in this small house with its creaky floors and cluttered rooms, none of that mattered. Here, they were just a family, imperfect, messy, real. And that was more than enough. Because at the end of the day, love wasn't about status or money or power. It wasn't about living up to other people's expectations or avoiding their judgment. It was about showing up, about choosing to stay when things got hard, about building something together, brick by broken brick, until it became a home. Ethan had learned that the hard way. He'd lost Claire and spent years believing he'd never find that connection again. But then Amelia had walked into his life, and she'd been just as broken, just as scared, just as desperate for something real. And together, they'd figured it out. Not perfectly, not easily, but honestly. And in a world that constantly demanded perfection, honesty was the most radical thing they could offer. Ethan held Amelia close and thought about the future, about Noah's first steps and Lily's graduation and all the moments they'd share as a family, about the challenges they'd face and the mistakes they'd make, and the ways they'd have to keep choosing each other over and over again. It wouldn't always be easy, but it would always be worth it. Because love, real love, wasn't about finding someone who completed you. It was about finding someone willing to be incomplete with you. Someone who saw your flaws and chose you anyway. Someone who stayed when the world said run. And Ethan had found that. Against all odds, through scandal and scrutiny and fear, he'd found it. And he wasn't letting go.